I do like that so much better than when we start with the countdown. Oh, it's so much better. Welcome to season 3 of Leading Through Stories. Back with me is Mary McAleithes, who is an educational leader, Helen Rose, who's passionate about grief, and of course me, Christy Wolf. I believe there is power in stories. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, please take a look at the show notes below. That's where all the information is about this episode, as well as links. And last episode, we talked all about Mary's work with educational leaders, reflecting on her role in Lift Leadership. So Mary, that was awesome.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
It was really good. And I'm glad this year we're going back and forth between having a guest and doing some of our own work. So this last episode was with Mary. You can find the links. I can send them in the takeaway email as well. But today we have a guest. Helen, tell us all.
Our guest today is Dr. Lisa Belanger, brilliant woman. She is the CEO of ConsciousWorks, a consulting firm that helps leaders apply the findings from leading edge scientific research to maximize their mental capacity and performance. Lisa has a Ph.D. in Behavioural Medicine. She has an Executive MBA and is a certified exercise psychologist and high performance specialist. Her greatest accomplishments include climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. How cool is that? With her father. She ran the Paris Marathon, and she is a professional snack holder to 2 tiny humans who are adorable. How this woman has the energy is, it's like, I bow to you. Lisa.
It's interesting when you hear that portfolio description, you anticipate you'd see a 60-year-old on the screen. Well,
totally.
Today,
Should I bring her in?
bring her in? Where is she?
Yeah.
Hello,
Hi.
Lisa. How are you doing? We're so excited to have you join us today. With Lisa, we're talking all about burnout. And the fact is that we all exist somewhere on the spectrum of peak performance to burnout. Like when I read that, I thought, wow, we're all on that little trajectory. But there's good news. The good news is that there are skills and there are habits and work designs that aid everybody in recovery from burnout and facilitate burnout prevention. And that's why we're so pleased to have Lisa join us today. Unfortunately, I'll need to excuse myself a little bit early as I have a previous commitment, but I will be catching up on re-listening to this podcast later on this evening. Anyway, Lisa, thank you for joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
So Lisa, we've told you that part of leading through stories is this idea that we believe that everyone is a leader from where they stand, and that we all have a story to tell. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about what brought you into this burnout recovery space?
So there's so much of my life that is really proactive. Like, what can I do to control? And I joke that I'm a control enthusiast. I think it is true. And what I did after my PhD was, and I always burn the candle at both ends. It's just where I thrive is 3 jobs plus school. And that never bothered me. There was so much meaning to my work. There was a lot of different variety in what I was doing. And I loved it. When I started, when I was done my PhD, I started a charity, and that was my whole heart on the table. And I definitely did not fill my own cup first. I would pay everybody else, figuratively and literally, before I'd pay myself. And with time and the amount of passion I had towards it, and then within charitable work, there's a lot of no's, there's a lot of setbacks. And then there's a lot of people that have expectations on you as a person because they donated something to the charity, which does not serve me, right? So I was noticing myself becoming quite depleted. And unfortunately, when we do have, and we're going to probably talk a lot about occupational burnout, so what you do for a living or for a wage and how that burns you out, it affects every other part of life too, because your mental well-being is the lens in which you view the world. So if that is gray, if that is hazy, that is going to impact the rest of life. And to be present and to really enjoy those many moments of awe and those really great things in life, and how much that takes away from it. And I was watching my friends do the same thing where they're experiencing these symptoms of burnout, what should be the most amazing productive years of life, and watching it through a haze. So it became really passionate about improving that quality of life, really digging in and knowing that there's ways to prevent this and there's ways to recover from this, which is not a lot of the discussion. So much of the discussion still is, oh, we have a major problem.
Yeah.
Not about what are those solutions, what are those things that we can really do to impact it.
Oh my gosh, so much resonated with what she just said. I feel like we could do this entire just talk about what and unpack that. Does anybody want to start with a question? I mean, we throw to our audience, what do you know about burnout? I personally, a lot of what you just said resonated with different layers. Like work is one piece of it, but it's every part of your life. And I find it's when it starts compiling that I start to lose it. What about you guys?
Oh, absolutely. It's like too much on my plate, and I just pile and pile and pile and pile, and then I'm not effective at anything in any area of my life. So I think for me, I have to recognize when that's happening. And I don't think, Lisa, you might agree, is that a lot of people don't do that. They put, especially for women, perhaps, is they put so much pressure on themselves to be the mom, the friend, the superstar, the spouse, the community, giver, all of that. And like you said earlier, Lisa, like, you forget to fill your own cup.
Yeah.
That's the number one rule to everything. If your cup's not full, you're not going to help anybody else.
The thing is too, and it's a kind of easy way to think about it, is when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. There's no way around that, right? Yeah. So you say no to, and what are you sacrificing for the thing you're saying yes to? So if you say to your child's skating club that you will sew 50 costumes, what are you saying no to? Is that time with your own kids? Is that sleep, which is more than likely? Is it, is it preparing fresh meals? And then you have to be really clear on what those value systems are for yourself. And once you kind of figure that out in this really great art of saying no, that becomes a lot easier because you're saying no to something regardless. You have to be willing to say no to the thing you're saying no to. So if it's sleep, well, then I question, how is that then going to impact you later on, right?
Yeah. And what's interesting to say that to that point, Lisa, I don't know about anyone else, but I will say yes. I'll go, yeah, sure. And then it's like, thumbs up. Sure, I'll do it. Meanwhile, my inside voice is like, no.
Yeah.
And when did it become bad to say no?
I don't know. I feel like I'm getting better at saying no, though.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking, and I think, I know all of us on screen, Lisa, you're new to me, but I think for women in particular, and maybe that's not a fair statement, but we naturally want to support, and we naturally want to give, and we naturally want to be there for people. And saying no is really difficult for some of us. So can we replace maybe no with maybe not yet or not now? Because I think when we say absolutely not, then I internalize it thinking, oh, I'm letting somebody down, or I'm not providing somebody with the support that they need. But maybe it's, no, I can't do that right now. Maybe a little later, but not now.
The way that I phrase it is I simply don't have capacity.
Oh, yeah.
It's and I mean that with friends too, or like loved ones. Sometimes they really need his support, and I'm going through life's hell. And I'm like, you know what? I really care. I just don't have capacity for that conversation right now. Yeah. And it's the same thing for work. And I do have a document, very happy to share it with you, that's how to say no without burning bridges, which eloquently puts different options. And the one that I absolutely love is to your boss or to somebody that has some sort of presence over you. When they assign something else, yes, absolutely, I'll do that for you. What am I deprioritizing to ensure that that is done well?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Carrie
Have you used that
McGuire.
with your husband?
Pardon?
Have you used that one with your husband?
100%. Not that he has any pull over me whatsoever, but that I don't have capacity for that right now because I am doing everything else has been used. It has been used.
It's interesting. So, Carrie, thank you for joining us. There's a comment that's come our way, and there's so many places where we cannot say no as a parent, as a partner. It's really hard to deliver all of the time. And so Carrie, thank you for joining us. And that's a really important comment that you've made. And, as we think about some of these concepts, that article, I think, will be really useful for us to take with us.
Yeah, and I think it's also useful, that article, no, I haven't read it, but I'm looking back 30 years. I was a single mom. I had my own business. I was mom and dad. And when my son was 11, I didn't have a nervous breakdown, but now I'm looking back and it's like I was burned out. And so I think that article may help too, to get over the guilt of that. Like I sent him to live with his dad, who was wonderful and great with him and all of that. There wasn't a bad thing, but there was always a little part of me that I thought I'd really let him down, when in fact I didn't. I needed that break. But at the time, burnout 30 years ago, we never heard about burnout.
No. And parental burnout is actually a thing. It was actually caregiving and parental burnout were researched much before occupational burnout. We know that it's a thing. It's when people, even if they're little versions of yourself, need you all the time for different things, and there is not a capacity to really say no. Like when my daughter wakes up at night and is screaming, there's no no to be had. There's you must deal with this. And all the way that affects you is so real and so true. We have to, and I cannot highlight this enough, like when the World Health Organization defines burnout, they call it a workplace phenomenon because they're defining occupational burnout. And why they say workplace phenomenon instead of psychological illness or psychological concern or any of that other language is because it goes back to the environment in which you exist. It is not you. It is not the opposite of resilience. You've probably been resilient for too long. Yeah. This is where for parental and for occupational and for caregiving and for athletic burnout, it becomes all of us supporting each other. It should never have been parenting up to you. That you've heard that like it takes a community and it takes a village, but we've gotten away from that, especially during COVID, where it's like, it's on you. And we've gotten this really siloed individual approach. No. And that is for burnout, there's no way to self-care your way through it. There's no way to even put boundaries around it so that you're okay. It has to be a full community involvement with all the different pieces of your life supporting you and holding you up. So instead of at the beginning of the pandemic, I had a 3-month-old baby and I just hired my 2 employees for a business based on gathering. And I was getting texts from girlfriends being like, don't forget to take care of yourself. And I'm like, when would you like me to do that? That falls on deaf ears unless they're coming over to take my child or to give capacity in some way, shape, and form.
And what does that mean?
Sorry, Ellen, I just want to show that. So Christina, who already made a comment, this is Christina that you did Caregivers in the Wild with, who's listening today. And so will you tell us a little bit about that? Because that kind of fits into this whole conversation as well.
Yes. With caregivers being people that are taking care of sick children, sick relatives, especially in that space. They're on all the time. There's always demands. There's so much guilt to pull away or to have life outside or to dream outside. And there's a trauma incident that happens with that as well, with being in the hospital, watching your sick relative, your person go through XYZ. And so with all these different layers, it makes for a very complex burnout situation that is everything. I talked about like the charity and the passion I had towards it. That actually makes me susceptible to burnout. If I didn't care about it, it would be a completely different issue. So like within my for-profit company, I can make these business decisions, no big deal. It doesn't bother me. The charity would keep me up at night. Caregiving is like an extreme version of this, where this is your everything. And so burnout is a reality that comes along with that. And it's very difficult to find the system in which you can exist without burning out. It requires help. It requires deep and effective conversations. It requires you to know exactly what you need, which at the best day, I highly doubt many people do, right? So it becomes something that, excuse me, I just this lingering cough. This thing that the self-awareness, self-reflection are so key. And then getting and capitalizing on these even just small moments of levity or of ways that we can practice different behaviors that we know help the brain kind of pull itself out of that burnout. And from the literature, hands down, the easiest, best practice, if I can rank them for burnout, is actually gratitude, which is easy and good. But what happens in burnout is we have a cynical loop that happens, and you cannot be cynical and grateful at the same time. So it allows for that pull out of that downward spiral. I'm saying it like it's easy. It's not. And what's so interesting about talking about burnout, for those that are burnt out, are actually quite cynical and receiving the information. Like cynicism's part of burnout, and then receiving information about like how you could get out of burnout is going to be met with a level of cynicism. So it's always a really delicate balance to pull, but that's where we can really help each other. It's not about the individual doing things that is burnt out. They're already burnt out. It's about all of us having helping hands.
And I think it's okay to say you're burned out. Like last fall, I went through a big burnout and I thought, nope, this is ridiculous. And so I just kind of withdrew from a lot of my work. And I think you should be okay with saying you're burned out. And I think, do you agree, Lisa, that in the past, people would kind of be like, oh, well, you did that. Imagine what I did. Like we're diminishing what people's journey is. And I think it's really important to say, you know what, I'm burned out and I'm just going to step back. And I think that's okay to say that.
And I think this is such an important point. I've even done it. So I'm going to admit to doing it when people like when you have a new child and they're like, I'm tired. I'm like, oh, are you? Like, are you tired? Why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You're experiencing life in such different realms. And so what I hear a lot with burnout is like, oh, I have the same workload and I'm fine. Yeah, because you're a different person with different, like existing in a different environment with different context. Yeah. Do not assume that people are weaker, not strong. Like that is just crap. And then the conversation around burnout is so important. I had one of my employees, ironically, making some of my burnout stuff and other work. And she called me and she was underwater. And I didn't realize, I forgot to ask. Okay. And then she took a while to approach me and say, okay, I have too much. Within moments, I was like, okay, we can move these priorities. Like this needs to be done for the client. So keep that one on the list, but let's just get rid of that one. That's fine. That's all it took. Yeah. That's all it took that she could see above water. But that conversation needs to happen. Meaning, as leaders, we have to open that door. And as teammates, we need to be able to walk through it. And so that's what I think is so important from both angles. We need to be able to say we're burnt out, but we need to be able to have a correct response to that as well, where it's supportive and not diminishing in any way.
Yeah.
I want to make space for Mary because she doesn't have all the time. Mary, what are your questions that are coming up for you?
Well, I have a question about your work, but I'm going to ask a question before that question. Lisa, as you talk about this, I love that you've said that this is a collective responsibility, that we're not alone in this. What question do I need to be thinking about when I notice my friend, my colleague, my whoever near me, my kids, when I'm seeing that burnout maybe behavior? What can I do?
What is the burnout behavior you're seeing?
Could be anything from frustration, lack of quality performance, crying, tears just kind of pouring down a face in the middle of a conversation, and what kinds of things could we be aware of as we reflect on those that we work closely with when it comes to burnout?
Yeah,
and what can we do about it?
The number one thing is empathy and meeting it with empathy. So when people are in distress in that way, the idea with empathy is that you're sitting beside somebody in distress. You might not understand it. You might not agree with it. It doesn't matter. It simply doesn't matter. It's not about you. They are in distress. So meeting that with care and empathy, it's hard to do when you're also feeling burnt out. So this is what's really important as we talk about lifting leaders, and is to be able to have that capacity to be able to slow down and to be able to truly hear somebody, because most people just need to be and want to be heard. If you have an empathetic leader, you are more likely to have meaningful, great conversations, but also to feel engaged in work. Same thing with children, with spouse, with whomever that are experiencing this. For support, people to support, there's so many things we can provide, but I'm going to go with the social and then I'll go to the logistical. Connection is something that helps prevent burnout, is being able to disclose to somebody, to be able to have these conversations, to be able to feel like you are heard. But then there's other logistics too. Like, are we rewarding our employees? Employees need that. And I don't mean financial. I truly mean reaching out with a level of gratitude and, hey, you're doing a great job. That simple things like that can go so far.
Yeah.
Having open, honest conversations about workload and helping people prioritize. When we feel burnt out, it's hard to see the end of our nose. And it's really helpful to have somebody else come in and be like, you know what? How about today you just do this, and help in that way. And then certainly in regards to talking about and evolving around fairness, if we feel like there's a level of unfairness in what we're doing, it's going to dramatically impact how we're viewing the situation. And then from a cynical piece, or from any part of it, really bringing them out with gratitude is a really effective strategy. Now, do you sound like Aunt Karen at the Thanksgiving table? We're like, let's go around the table and say something you're thankful for. Yes, you do. So that becomes your role. But even the thought process of trying to find something you're grateful for will help bring people out of that cynical. So there's a few things we can very logistically do. And then there's certainly just being that community and support for individuals.
I loved, of course, been going through your website. You've got such a wealth of experience and information that you're sharing with us. Tell us a little bit about your virtual workshops. I was intrigued. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I offer a variety of different virtual workshops. And what I love about what I do is proactive mental health and human performance. And when it comes to things like burnout, it's actually an amazing way to experience content is alone in your own environment. And it's quite interactive for self-work, and then being able to collectively have conversations with others. And it's amazing how much these things are shared experiences. So certainly being able to think through your own life and what, uniqueness that looks like, but then also being able to share with colleagues and creating a really psychologically safe, powerful space within the virtual setting, which brings people together in a really meaningful, different way.
So when you're running those virtual workshops, does it tend to be for an organization that brings their own people and they're all just doing it virtually?
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I'm going to excuse myself. Lisa, what an honor to connect with you. I look forward to our connections in Canmore when I'm down there next. Thank you. I'm just going to sign off. Christy, thank you. Helen, thank you. And
Bye.
Thank you to all of our audience. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, hon. So, Lisa, when I introduced you, I'm going through all this stuff that you did. I also made you a certified exercise psychologist instead of a physiologist. I'm sorry. But wouldn't surprise me if you were. But one of the questions, okay, so I see you, we're on Facebook together. I see how busy you are. And it's like, how does this woman do what you do? It's crazy. You're really inspiring, but it's like, how does she pull that off? So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, how do you personally not burn out? How do you do what you do and not burn out?
Coffee. So I don't know if you've ever tried it, but it's a huge fan. So two things allow me to do scope of work, and one of them is autonomy. I run my own company. That's huge. Autonomy is absolutely huge as a protective mechanism for burnout. So if you're leaders and you want to give autonomy, if you want to ask for autonomy yourself on how and when you do your work, I have full flexibility. I want to go for a nap after this, I can. I don't, but I could in theory, knowing I could is really nice. So autonomy bridges a lot for me. And the other thing is a foundational community of people. So being able to always have people you can count on from a logistics perspective, I can't pick up my child. Can somebody else do it? Very much that to, I had a really hard day. Do I have somebody to talk to? That is so meaningful and powerful within work and outside of work on how we can help protect against these feelings of burnout. Now, like you, I will fully admit, I catch myself before going into burnout. That's hard. Most people, when you're burning out, you're already burnt out. You're like, I'm already there. It's such a slow burn that you by the time you realize it's an issue and it's impacting you as much as it is every single day, you've already sunk in there. I know there's certain things about me that is self-reflection, that is being able to pull yourself out. So for example, heavy travel schedules are something that are exhausting to me and most people. So making small rules about always flying in the day before, so that I have a night before I have to get on stage or do my work or what have you, because it's very stressful the morning of and traveling in Canada and all the other things. So creating a set of rules. The other thing is too, I know that if I'm not spending enough time with the people that I love, like I start feeling that pull because of whether it's travel or work or what have you, and then prioritizing it, right? And making sure it's quality time and fun. And then last but not least, like dance parties are an absolute must, because you can't be burnt out in dancing. It's impossible.
Well, you know what? I mean, it's cute you said that, but it's very true. Like it's for, I guess that's a great question to ask, is like, I could ask Christy too, is like, so when you're feeling that, because Christy, you and Lisa are very similar. I mean, you guys are crazy busy and with your little ones and all of that and all the work that you do. For me, I love to run. That's what gets me out of my head, and I love it. And that's what I do. Christy, what do you do?
Well, I would have to say, like what Lisa was talking about earlier with like the nonprofit side of things and like giving back, that is actually really does fill my bucket. So working with people on digital stories, for example, although that is my job, it is also something that is really important to me. And I think it's helpful that I have different spaces in my life. Like Wolfpack Warriors is one thing, which I love, but also digital storytelling. Nothing is my full time. So it feels fresh when I get to turn to something different. I think that's a big part of it too. And even just Lisa and I met for coffee one day, and a walking meeting or a coffee with somebody where I just get to chat. I mean, it's the same with the Leading Through Stories ladies. Like I love this time of just connecting and seeing where people are at and then going back to something else that I need to do. So I look forward to this every single time we do it.
And I just want to add to this. Burnout's not that you're doing too much. It's you're doing too little that lights you up.
Oh,
that's a good point.
So one of my friends is small kids, big career, flying all the time. And she volunteers one night a week for mothers in need. And her husband's first response was, get rid of the volunteer work. You can just drop that. And she's like, no, that's actually what fills me up. Right. So that's the thing that I need to actually function at my best, and just knowing what drains and what charges you and being able to ensure that you have both.
Well, that's brilliant. Oh, that was really well said. Yeah. Like didn't think about that. It's like, for me, if I, me drive an hour to see my grandkids, that is my time. I love it.
Yeah.
Right? I don't find it exhausting at all to be around a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, because I get to leave too, to be fair. But still, after I've had a big work day, I'm driving an hour to see them and I'm not tired. It's just, that's well said, what lights you up.
You know what else I love? Driving by myself.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that for a second? Lisa, you've got young kids. Like I have to listen to their podcast or listen to the questions. And when I get to just drive to Calgary without anybody else in the car, it's like a vacation.
Yeah, I had somebody say that, oh, you must be so tired of the drive. And I'm like, nope. Like as long as the weather's fine, it means I get to listen to my music, me in a dance party or a podcast or a connection with a friend, calling somebody from wherever. I really embrace those like moments of solitude that we talk so much in the pandemic about how important it is to connect with others, which it is. It's an innate need. We need to have community and connection. But we also need alone time. And for some of us, that's the rarity. That is the thing that you're able to refuel a little bit to deal with the people.
Absolutely. Well, and so I came across you in the summer. Our connection was actually through Mike Lang, and Christina, who's here, is also like tied into that whole piece. But when I started looking at your stuff, I ended up binging every one of your podcasts on bike rides. So friends, if you haven't listened to Lisa's podcast yet, every single one was amazing, because you have just like an informal way of bringing these topics down to any level. That was a big part of it for me. So thank you for doing them. I have noticed that there haven't been any lately. Is this on hiatus?
There is some big things in the work. Give me a minute, okay?
I did ask her beforehand if there's anything I wasn't allowed to ask.
No, we're working on a whole bunch of things behind the scenes. So really excited for the new year, and definitely will be more podcasts.
Okay. So that's one of the things I did want to mention. We always send a takeaway email. So kind of things that you can look into after the fact. One of the things that we're going to include this time is Lisa's burnout alert system. So thinking about how to assess your team. So if you are in a workspace where you're thinking about burnout, that might be helpful. What I just mentioned was her podcast, Work Less, Produce More. We will put the link to that. I loved it.
It's an excellent podcast.
Yeah.
Well
and
done.
now I know there's more coming, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And there will also be links to her website, ConsciousWorks, as well as your own personal website. Helen, tell us what else is going to be in there.
In where?
Did you
In
see
the
the panic?
newsletter? You mean for me? I am going to be speaking about my work around grief, and I know specifically looking at managing the holidays. So kind of a follow-up to what we were talking about today. But a lot of people really struggle at that holiday with Christmas, and it's okay to not. I mean, this year I'm going away for 2 weeks, so I'm like, I'm not going to put a tree up. And then I'm like, yeah, I will. So again, it's pacing when I'm going to put. But it's like talking about stuff that, for me personally, I did not have a nice childhood. Christmas was very horrific around our home. And so those memories keep creeping back in, and I'm certain I'm not the only one. So I want to talk about how you can manage the holidays and still have, instead of being bah humbug, still have somewhat of a nice holiday with family. Like nothing like bringing out dysfunction is spend some holidays with your family. Right? So
that is our December 21st episode. Will be more around Helen's work, and kind of actually perfectly leading up to that. One of the things that will also be in the takeaway email is Lisa's Advent calendar. Tell us about it.
So the Advent calendar is really central to how chaotic this time of year can be. And whether you are a teacher, whether you're just preparing for the holidays, whether you have an eccentric family that you will spend a lot of time with, whatever that looks like for you, and even for me driving in this weather, a bunch of different practices that we can have, that we keep that inner peace, that we keep that calm within the storm. These are all science-based approaches, quick, easy tips to integrate into your life, and certainly at this time of year.
Yeah, so it pops up as soon as you hit her website. It pops up, and you can put your email in. I already have. So I know this time gets really complicated.
Yeah.
My two kids also have their birthday next week on the same day, so they hit their birthday, and then it's like Christmas chaos. Like it's just this time feels overwhelming. But
Christy, you had two kids, 2 boys on the same holiday?
Yes.
On the same day?
November 22nd is their birthday, which always leads to somebody saying, oh, what happens before that? And
I'm not going to say anything.
One was 8 weeks early and one was 4 weeks early and still hit the same day. So
wow. Maybe we should do a podcast on that.
On the magic of Christy's birthday plan.
It was truly an honor. Like, I have a lot of time for you. I think you're an amazing young woman, and you are very inspirational just to watch. And yeah, it was great. Thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Yeah, so nice seeing you guys. I'll see you at Safeway. So
yeah, well, or Christy.
Yeah, Lisa, thank you so much. We'll sign off for this time, and have a wonderful rest of your November, friends.
Thank you. Bye everyone.
Bye.